Going live. We are live on Facebook. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. How are you guys doing today? This is the beautiful, amazing Helen Vav. She's a wonderful woman I met while I was in India 110 years ago, kind of.
Pretty much.
um, so, Helen, you remember a lot better than I do, and I apologize. Where exactly did we meet?
So, Joy, you and I met in Goa. It was 2012. I had been traveling at that point. I left my job and started a round the world tour, and India was my first stop. And I was in Goa. I wasn't having the best time. I've learned through my travels that I love going to the beach, but being alone at a beach, especially in Goa, where Caucasian women are sometimes synonymous with showgirls, got me a lot of unwanted attention. I was not having the best time at all. And, it's a really special place, Goa, but I was kind of down in the dumps. I'd been in a motorbike accident. I think I'd been accidentally swept off on an involuntary date somewhere, which I pride myself out of. I wasn't loving it. And I was on my last night in Goa, getting ready to say goodbye to that place, and ran into a couple of Indian women, actually Malaysian women of Indian heritage, who were vacationing there. And we just started having drinks. And somehow the night took a wayward form and completely made up for all of the other Goa experiences. And at the end of it, there was joy. And so I met you sort of out on the town in Goa. And then I think the next day we hung out a bit at your beautiful home. And then that was kind of it. So that's, I think, where we met.
Okay, awesome. And Facebook has been amazing because I've kept in contact with a ton of my good friends who I've met. That's one of the things about being a traveler, which you probably know, is you meet amazing people for 24, 48 hours, maybe a week, and then they're gone. It's like, yeah, no, don't leave. But with Facebook, it's been a great way to stay in contact with those great connections that I had. And you had met Bindu.
Yes.
Yes, the little girl who's barely 5 foot tall. She would get on my scooter and I'd have to hold it real tight because the whole thing would go tip. So where are you living right now?
I live in Washington, D.C.
Okay. So can you tell me about something that makes you smile?
Something that makes me smile. First thought is my niece and my nephew. They're 2 and 5. And they're just adorable, and I love them to pieces. So that's the first.
Being an aunt's a great thing. You can borrow them and then give them back.
That is true.
So we're going to talk today about something that Helen did that I thought was very incredible. She was in a job. We're going to talk about the job and stuff like that. And she ended up taking an entire year off. And then she went back to work. So we're going to go deeper on the process of finding yourself and then returning back to what you were doing, and then how it affects you and how she used what she learned to do some tweaks. So what do you do for a living? What is your job or your career?
So I am an operations management consultant.
Okay, what is that?
Yeah, I wish I could answer that easily. It's always a long story, but basically I work with operating businesses. Often they're industrial, but not solely that, to help them perform continuous improvement on their businesses. So often we're called into a site or a location that might be a factory or a construction site or a mine, and using sort of my knowledge of like operations management, I work with the teams there to try and improve their performance.
Okay. And I think you said something to me when you were trying to talk to me about your business. You said you have to have a reason to use the bathroom. Did I hear that right?
Have to have a reason to use the bathroom. Oh, geez, I don't remember that one.
Oh, you have to explain yourself or something.
Oh, I felt, I think what you're getting at is my job is really fast paced. And I was working, first of all in factories where I started my career, and later on in consulting firms, and always feeling that the stakes were really high. So probably Probably what I was saying was, I felt guilty even taking a bathroom break. So maybe something like that.
There you go.
Yeah, that's what I bet it was. But I think that's a good illustration of like the pace and the urgency with which I often find myself on projects. Yeah.
And I'm going to ask that loaded question. Do you think that because you were a woman, you had to work harder in that position?
I would say that has been a theme ever since I left university and started working. And so I was pretty much throughout education, there was never anyone who said to me, oh, because you're a woman, you'll need to plan differently. My family was really all for education. I think I grew up in communities where, gender didn't ever come up in school. I was Canadian. I am Canadian. So like the environment was very supportive all the way through school.
Okay.
And when I graduated, I decided I wanted to take a bit of a career pivot before I'd even started my career. I actually had been studying life sciences. I had brain science specifically, and I thought, okay, I'm going to go become a doctor one day. But I was totally like done with university and didn't want to go on to do some of the further education. And I really liked leadership. So I thought, where can I go to, I guess, have an opportunity to develop like leadership capabilities at a young age. And I just wanted to go in and try it because I knew that you learn by doing. And I had enough experience at that point to know that I needed to go and do something. It turned out the first place that offered me that was actually a food factory. So I ended up going from, life sciences to actually consumer goods and working in a food plant. And at the time it was, mostly males on the shop floor. And my role was actually as a frontline supervisor. So 21-year-old Helen out on the line, no engineering degree, but some leadership interest, trying to convince others to, to try things in a certain way. And I think gender did come up over that time and throughout my career, I would say. So I do think, yeah, it's something, but I'm grateful for it too, because I think it has taught me to really understand the people I'm working with, to be able to get into their shoes and try to bring them along. So like it has been a challenge, but it's also, I think, given me back skill that has been useful as I went on in my career.
Okay, awesome. So you were working as a consultant for how long?
I guess 4 or 5 years.
Okay. And then you decided to take a pretty big pivot and quit work. What brought you to that point?
Well, I mean, we've kind of alluded to it, but I think I burnt out. Um, and so, a couple years into working in consulting, which was pretty much my dream after I went back and studied business and got out and was doing work that I thought was very impactful. I was like, really, really grateful for the opportunity that I had. But about after the second year, I started developing some health issues, migraines and things like that. And I mean, at the end of the day, it just, you know, it became very difficult to manage like what actually was a chronic health condition and work. And so I pushed through for more than a year after that. I think it was almost 2 years after I first started having health issues. And then I decided to try pursuing another corporate role. But, by this point, being in the United States, being engaged, the visa didn't work out the way we thought. So I had sort of made the assessment. I said, well, do I want to keep working or do I need a break? And I thought, no, I need a break. So at that point, about a year ago to maybe a little more than a year ago to now, I said goodbye to something that, it was really hard to say goodbye to because I really did like a lot of the things I was doing there.
So what did you do? So you decided to take time off. Did you say I'm going to take a year off, or did you just say I'm going to work because you were working on getting your visa so you could officially work in the United States?
Yeah. So I just said farewell. I mean, so there was no like leave of absence or anything like that. And
Okay.
my thought around how I would use the year was it was September. So I thought, okay, until Christmas, I'm just going to enjoy myself, hang out, relax. And then in the new year, my plan was to start to learn some new skills that would allow me a little bit more flexibility when I did go back to work. So data science is a big field that's emerged. And for someone with a consulting background, it seemed like a really good way to learn some new skills and maybe be able to work a little more remotely, because I was traveling during my job. So I thought,
yes, you were never home either. You were gone.
Yeah, I was on the road probably 9 months a year, Sunday to Friday. So that's why there was burnout. It was just a long time to be away from home,
And you were newly married and.
Yeah. So it was just, it was time to spend some time at home. So actually, where my first sabbatical that you and I met at, I was out exploring the world and growing that way. This time I was staying home and growing in a different way. And I think it's been good.
So how was your first month being off? Were you bored? Did you have to teach yourself how to relax? What was the pros and what were the minuses of taking off time from a very intense job?
So, I did have to remind myself not to work, especially because like there were times when I would work at home. So I was like primed to like wake up and like go to my laptop and try to find something to be productive with. And I kind of quickly figured out, and I had another friend who was kind of leaving work at a similar time for similar reasons. And we both talked about how we shouldn't have any goals for a little while because we didn't want to like jump into something for the wrong reasons. And so even though I was used to being really, really productive, actually didn't allow myself to make any checklists, to, take any courses even. The only courses I was allowed to take were fitness things like going to yoga or, or whatever. But that was kind of some boundaries I put on myself to say, until the holidays, you should just, reset a little bit. And I'm glad I did that.
But that was a very smart move. Because I know how easy it is just to stay busy. Okay, watch it on my phone. Single mother life. I've got the TV all locked up, so I can barely watch it. Okay, so I apologize for the interruption. Back to recap what you had said. You had put boundaries and no goals and trying to say, I'm not going to work. I'm going to sit down and do nothing. Or what did you do to fill up your time? I mean, well, 12 hours can be a long time when you're just staring at the walls going, okay, the house is clean, laundry's folded. Or did you binge on Netflix? Was it easy for you to fall into that relaxation mode?
I had an easy time with it after maybe the first week or two. Behind me, you'll see I did get some hobbies. Like I got into gardening. There's some of my plants back there.
I'm happy.
I just would go out for walks, do yoga. I miss going to the yoga studio now that we have COVID, I have to tell you. And like just getting into the fitness side of things as well. So it was really good. And I think that the big challenge was kind of what I already said. It was like reminding myself not to feel bad that I wasn't productive. And, when that first paycheck didn't come through the next month, to say, oh, okay, it's okay. You've already kind of planned for this. You'll be fine.
Okay. So you did plan to take time off from work.
Well, so I had it in mind that, I always try to keep a financial runway. So like, how they say you should have 6 months of savings. That's kind of the way we are. And I mean, there's two of us. We live in a 1-bedroom apartment. We live in a city, but we try to live a little, frugally, just so that, on a rainy day we can. And I guess that worked out for this year.
Yes, that was something I was talking about to somebody today. I think Americans are finally starting to pay attention to, we need to save money. We need to live more frugally. We don't need so much stuff. And it's wonderful to speak to somebody who, you were in the position where the bottom didn't fall out because you ended up not having or not being able to work. This was kind of a forced sabbatical in some ways, but you were able to say, hey, we're going to make the best of it. And I really like that. Okay, so did you learn any skills that you thought you would be able to implement when you went back to work?
So there's like some technical skills I picked up around like computer science things that I didn't have before. And I'm still waiting for the day to use those. And I think I'll be learning those for a long time to come. But like in terms of personal skills, I think the big thing would be that going back to work now, and I'm still just pretty fresh into it, I'm trying to remind myself that it's okay to take a break. And that learning from the year, like, I think in the environment I was in, like, a lot of the people tend to be really like highly driven, high achieving. And so if you're feeling tired and burnt out, as I was for quite a long time, you feel like there's something wrong with you. And,
Oh, because
like,
no one else admits it.
because no one else admits it. And that's exactly it. Like, um, I was like, wow, that really took a lot out of me. And then, actually, I think I worked in a pretty humble workplace where sometimes you get it, but still, there's still like a fear that people have that if they show too much of that, someone will think maybe they're not cut out for the job, or, so it's something that people really don't speak about at all. Or my favorite example is, no one speaks about how hard it is to write a PowerPoint presentation, which is a famous thing for consultants, right? And when I'm sitting writing a pack, I mean, I might actually only be productive writing the pack for a few hours once I do it, but it's all the mental work to get. It's like writing an essay in school. Like, who likes writing an essay, right? So, but like in consulting, you won't hear people say, "Wow, that really wiped me out," but like, it did wipe you out. I know it did. It wipes everyone out. And so I think going in with some more grounded expectations around, like, oh yeah, it's okay to be tired. It's because you're trying really hard, or it's the working, and then being a little more compassionate to yourself.
Okay. And then, so you were on your time off, and then COVID happened, and all of us got a sabbatical from life in many ways.
Yeah.
Was that something that what did you do with COVID to stay sane?
So it's funny because when COVID started, I was like, you guys, I've been doing this for 6 months now. I will teach you. Like, I actually felt like totally it wouldn't really change very much. And I think we had it here a little better than others because we don't have small kids running around that we have to, and me not being in work, that made things a lot easier. I did feel the toll in terms of, like, I actually felt more responsible to like check in with loved ones who were sometimes having a hard time. So I had the toll in that way, but in a lot of ways, I feel like I was spared some
Hey,
of it.
that's wonderful. Some people, not everybody needs to suffer from something. So I know you told me you called me a couple, or yeah, we were talking, and you said I'm going back to work, and tell me a little bit more about that.
So when I got my work authorization in July, I decided it was, time to start looking around for jobs. And I started interviewing, and some really interesting like jobs came up that I thought, oh, that could be great, or that could be great. And I realized that, I mean, I've had this time off, but, one of the things that we had thought we would do before COVID happened was actually travel and do that before I jumped back into a job, because my husband probably could take a little time. He's a massive vacation. So I realized, I mean, originally when you and I met, I was on this other type of sabbatical traveling, and I've always wanted to do that again. And I realized that if I went back to the same profession, but as a freelance consultant, I
Okay.
could actually, have that balance that I didn't quite have when you're going one project to the next, because you have pauses in between. And I could also fulfill some of my goals around personally, like traveling. And, I'm listening to a blog, a podcast called Counting Countries right now. If anyone listens to podcasts, I just got into them a little bit more, but it's a podcast, about people who want to visit every country in the world, and
Camping countries?
counting countries.
Oh, counting countries.
And actually, that's a personal goal that I have, which is I'd like to visit every country in the world in my life. I'm not in a hurry to do it, but I thought, being a freelance consultant would actually allow these long periods of time so that, we could get out and at least do a few of them. So,
Gotta
yeah.
start somewhere. Okay, so when you went back to work, now that you had time off and learned a little bit more life balance, what happened?
Well, the nature of my job is generally we're called in because we're helping implement something, and there's a deadline right off the bat, and it's not a 1 year thing. Often it's a few months, and then so coming in, the structure was this is going to be a sprint, and so there was a challenge there in like, um, you know, okay, well, I have to now go from 0 hours of required work a day to 14 probably.
Well,
And I remember the first week, I think I kind of, it was really weird being back in an office and back in an office during COVID, but I remember just allowing myself to go for a lunch break and like leave the office and go for a lunch break. That was like a huge, seems small, but like it was something that I would always eat my lunch at my desk. So there were a few days where I actually got out and like walked around a little and had lunch. And I think that it was, I don't think I got any less work done for it.
okay.
I think the breaks actually, I was, you know, it was helpful to just be more energetic when I was actually performing work later on. So allowing myself to take breaks was part of it. I also realized that I had to, and this is something I'll be working on for a long time, but I have to limit what I promise to do to folks, right? and and that's we all want to please other people. Um, you know, there's a bit of imposter syndrome there too. It's like, oh, like I'm here. What can I do to demonstrate the value of being here? And so, you know, that's a good impulse, but it's important to be realistic about what you can do. And I noticed a couple of times over the past couple of months when I started to feel signs of stress, it was probably because I overcommitted. And so I think that's something I'll be working on going forward.
I hear you. So did you find yourself slipping back into your old self and like trying to hit it hard and not taking the tips? I know you said you took lunch. Did you take lunch every day? Um,
I didn't take it every day, I'll confess, but I did step out most days and like grab my lunch somewhere. But I did notice as the burst went on and I'm just coming off of it, you know, I started eating less healthy and you know doing a lot of the things that show that you're under a little bit more stress. And for me, knowing that in about a week probably there won't be work, I'm okay with that because I know it's a burst. And structurally there's a huge difference in like going in a burst for 2 months and then taking a month off between another project and doing that and then doing another 5 month or 6 month project and then you know never really getting that catch up time.
so you just said that you're going to have a month off. How is, oh, so being a freelancer means they'll hire you, you work for a certain period of time and then you have nothing?
So when I'm done with this, I'll probably have a new client. And so you can structure time off before you start accepting new work. And I mean, you have to be comfortable with downtime. There's trade-offs there. Um, you know, there's a little bit of risk there as well if you don't get something. But I think what I'm trying to just reassure myself of is that there will be something, and not to just mindlessly jump into something that might not be right because it's the first thing that's available.
That is something I've been working incredibly hard on. Also,
Mm-hmm.
it's say no, that doesn't feel right. No, it
Yeah.
doesn't. We're gonna wait until something comes, and I'm like, okay, that's the course of action. And it's really hard to say no, and you're like, the bank account's going down. You're like, I'm sitting here doing nothing. So
Mm-hmm.
sorry, I need my water. What is the one goal that you're working towards now that you are going to be a freelancer? Are you planning on staying as a freelancer for a while and then?
I think this is it for the foreseeable future. I mean, like as a business owner, the things that I'm working towards are um, making people know about my service and having a few regular clients who might actually want to, you know, retain me at different times. And so for me right now, I'm just trying to get the word out to folks that, you know, this is what I'm doing and, you know, trying to really communicate that and develop. So I was thinking about, you know, in my field, which is, you know, consulting, how you do that. And I think I'm more interested in long-term relationships with folks that, you know, I can get to know and help, you know, meaningfully as opposed to maximizing the product projects and maybe not having that long-term horizon.
Okay. And then I had changed my sentence. I'm sorry, but
No
what's
worries.
the one goal that you're now
Oh
working
yeah.
towards when it comes to for the next, 6 months or a year?
Okay. So sorry, personal goal and
Both.
business goal. I'll tell you.
They both matter.
So, okay, no, my business goal is I actually want to sell a project all by myself. And you know, I've been a contributor to projects and I really want to get out there and sell my own piece of work. And so that's it. And personally, I want to be in better health in 6 months than I am today. More fit, more rested, and just in a form of balance, basically.
And what does balance look like to you? Sorry, I
Oh
have to
man,
add that one more question as you walked
I
into
deserve
it.
that. So I think for me, balance involves time to physically like work out and take care of myself, time to spend with my husband where I'm not thinking about work, because I think like it's easy to bring the work into the weekend. So just like totally time off. And then also time to really, and this was something I spent a lot of time on this year, was I invested a lot in my close friendships and reinvested time into like phone calls and checking on people, and you know just people who really matter to me, and making sure that I still have time for whatever is going on with them. And to me, that would be balance.
That's a beautiful summary of balance, because I know every one of us has balance that looks different, but yes, having time for friends and having a weekend where there's no work. It's for like nowadays when I'm doing three different things, it's like, oh my god, a whole weekend of no work, bliss.
Yep.
So I hear
Yeah.
you. Well, thank you so much for being brave. When I called Helen, I said, hey, can I interview you? She's like, live on Facebook? I said, yeah. She goes, let me think about it. So thank you. I really, really
Well,
appreciate it.
thank you.
I think
I
it's
appreciate it too, Joy. I really do. Thank you so much. Take
pleasure
care.
of mine. So I think, no, just one more thing though. I think us as women, we got to work. There's this thing called life. So it's how do we as women, as responsible women who want to make our lives better, take the steps. And not all of us are blessed enough to take time off work, but even daily, there's different ways of looking at things and thinking about things that can change how we operate. And so thank you for sharing your tips and tricks and doing that.
Thank you so much. Take care.
All righty, over and out.